And welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome Jasminka Criley. She's a hospitalist. Today's Kevin MD article is When Grief Hits All at Once, a Morning of Heartbreak and Love. Jasminka, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. It's a great pleasure to be here.
All right, so tell us what led you to share this story on Kevin MD.
Wow. Okay. So I just wrote an article in the morning and I thought it might be useful to your audience and to your clinicians to hear maybe a little bit different perspective on the very important topic that is the death and dying and the process of grief.
Hmm. All right, now, for those who didn't get a chance to read your article yet, tell us the story.
As a story, okay, well, maybe I can just sort of share a little bit of my background.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm an internal medicine physician, a hospitalist. I have over 30 years experience at the bedside. Working in a hospital, we often take care of seriously ill patients, talking about end of life, care, hospice, all this end of life decision making. It's very familiar to us. We do that very, very often. In addition to that, I also advise palliative care and hospice companies to help them grow and improve the care. And yet, nothing prepared me, not my amazing internal medicine residency training at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, which is just absolutely amazing place, nor my abundant clinical experience at the bedside for the depth of empathy and compassion that I grew after losing my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So actually everything changed after I lost her. I did have, in addition to being a physician, I also had experience of being a caregiver. I have been taking care of my parents-in-law for a number of years, and also I was a primary caregiver for my own parents as well. I helped my mother-in-law transition into palliative care and a hospice. And, so already kind of had those experiences, but really experiencing grief firsthand as a daughter, it increased the empathy and compassion to the level I think I could have never learned in the medical training or at the bedside. I could actually even say that it reshaped not just how I practice medicine, but how I connect with others. And I've been, this is just a little bit of background because throughout my whole practice, I was always advocate for the patient-centered care.
Mm-hmm.
Advocating for patients has been kind of in the heart of how I practice medicine. And working in a hospital or working outside of the hospital, being a physician and then being a caregiver, I had maybe advantage that most maybe other people who are not in the medical field have, knowing the systems, knowing the inpatient, knowing the outpatient, but then also there is that other intangible thing called emotion.
Mm.
And when we read patient charts, we cannot really kind of gather how those emotions shaped up. And as a caregiver, I basically saw both the emotional and the systemic realities that families face outside the hospital. And that actually perspective really drives everything that I do. In addition to doing the clinical work and having experience being a caregiver, I'm also founder and the CEO of the Indelible Learning, which is the edtech company that builds engaging mobile tools that teach health, civic science to K-12 and the professionals. And I'm also a medical educator. For over 25 years, I have been teaching in a medical school level. I have been teaching at UCLA School of Medicine since about 2007 or so. So I always, either in the bedside or in the classroom, my mission has always been the same: to lead with empathy, to empower others, to make learning and healing indelible. So you ask, well, why did you write this article? How did you write this article? That article came from the very raw and real place.
Mm-hmm.
And being a physician too, we have all these experiences. But what happened is, it was that one single morning, which was a deeply emotional morning. And as you said in the title, a moment when the grief hit from multiple directions all at once. That morning, I learned about the death of two people, which I shared in the article.
Mm-hmm.
So the first was Mirjana, an extraordinary woman. She was a fearless human rights leader. She was a devoted wife and wife of my drama professor since my childhood, also mother to wonderful daughters, young grandmother, and a dear friend whose life left a very lasting impact on many people. And I actually knew that she was ill. She shared her diagnosis with me. So my scientific mind was aware of her poor prognosis,
Mm-hmm.
but she was still very lively. She was still doing things, involved in lots of different things. And her loss at the time was very unexpected and it shook me. And interestingly, just moments later, I saw another post, believe it or not, on a Facebook. Both of those posts I saw on a Facebook. That was about the death of someone else I knew. He was a fellow parent from our kids' school.
Mm-hmm.
He and his family moved away after his daughter graduated from high school, but we still kept in touch. He was always supportive. He was curious about my medical work and gaming. He was always tagging me on social media platforms. He was sending me articles about medical simulations and healthcare. And he was our age. And shockingly, all of a sudden, he was gone too. And both of them died of cancer. And then it's very interesting because as I was absorbing that news in real life too, my phone surfaced a memory, as the phones often do, 2 years to the day of the time I took my own mother
Mm-hmm.
to see her oncologist. And she unfortunately died of cancer too, just 8 months after that. And I'm still grieving that loss. I am not over it. And then interestingly, that very date, which was March 29, also marked a day when my great grandmother died and when my grandfather was born.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, all of this, all those memories and kind of events, everything colliding at that one morning. And I found myself asking the question, how do we process all this
Yeah.
and how do we carry on when we feel the loss and when the loss is relentless? And how do we stay grounded? Because life, all often, including that morning, reminded me how fragile it is and how it can just change in a moment. So I didn't really plan to write an article that day, but I think that emotions demanded space. So I just
Mm-hmm.
wrote and I wrote it in the middle of these emotions. I just sat down, I poured all of this out, grief, shock, reflections, everything. And I mean, I didn't share all the details about those people because I was still processing it. But perhaps, in all of this, one of the very striking things and the sad, maybe sad, the thing in this was that the sad news kind of came to me not through a phone call, but through social media, through Facebook.
Yeah.
Which
So,
is, yeah, so it's like, an algorithm. We have an algorithm, and
mm-hmm.
those algorithms somehow, I don't know how, all of a sudden just serve those two obituaries and the memory on the day, which was already filled with meaning.
Yeah. So
Um,
let me ask, even with your background in palliative care, you said
mhm.
that it didn't necessarily teach you to process all the emotions that accompany a tragic event and accompanies all the grief that you describe. So tell me, how did you move forward? Tell me the process by which you process all these emotions that was going through your head during this time.
I think it is really very hard. It's not easy. I think probably emotions are something that are the most powerful thing that we experience in life.
Hmm.
And I know nowadays we talk so much about mental health, but really emotions are at the core of that mental health. And taking time to slow down, to think about it, to acknowledge our emotions, whatever it is. Is it a shock? Is it a sadness? Or whatever it is, It's extremely important. We experience emotions as a physicians at the bedside constantly, and we are, I think, very good in compartmentalizing them, sometimes really going in a rapid speed,
Mm-hmm.
making rapid decisions, life and death decisions, doing the best for our patients, but it does affect us. And on the other side, too, we are human beings who have life outside of our work. And that life outside of our work, too, has its own demands.
Yeah.
Not only physical, physical is easy, but emotional demands. How often do you find yourself being maybe bombarded or asked by friends, family, problems come up, and all this kind of stuff drains your emotional bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just really important to stop and think about how can you take care of yourself better? How can you recharge? So if you are sad, do not just push it away. Kind of stop and whatever helps. Is it go for a run? For me, it was really writing it down and putting it on all on paper. Or maybe just do something that we physicians are often deprived of. It's sleep. Sleep, rest. But you need to really have your emotional bank account full because it helps how you deal with things.
You wrote in your article that grief was an
Mm-hmm.
ocean with unpredictable tides. Tell us the type of strategies or anchors that you found helpful in learning to swim against the waves of sorrow, as you put it.
Oh boy, I don't think that I have the answer yet. I think some people say, oh, the grief has stages, and there are only 5 stages, and you go through the stages, and then at the end of the stages, you're going to feel better. I don't think that grief has necessarily very clearly defined stages. I think it is a journey. I think it is a very transformative journey, especially if you live your life with emotions, with empathy and compassion. And I think that journey changes us deeply. So when I talk about those waves and the tides, this is really kind of what happens in life. Sometimes you just work and you're busy
Mm-hmm.
and you are fixing things and helping and creating or all this kind of stuff that you're doing. And maybe you don't even have a time to grieve. And then something happens, like you see those announcements about somebody dying, and it just reminds you, you have all these memories, and it triggers something in you.
Mm-hmm.
And when it triggers, I personally am still trying to search for answers because I do not understand. I don't understand, even as a physician, I don't understand all these mysteries of life and death yet. So I think the strategy that you're asking me about, I really don't have a strategy except to slow down
Mm-hmm.
and to acknowledge your emotions. And I don't know, another strategy as a scientist, yeah, I don't know if you want me to share that part too, but another strategy is probably to be open to the experiences that cannot necessarily be explained by purely science and scientific data
Mm-hmm.
that we currently have at our disposal to measure things.
So that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you
Mm-hmm.
in terms of sometimes we need to find reassurance or things that cannot be scientifically explained. And in your
Mm-hmm.
article, you have a specific number that you attribute meaning to. How important is it
Mm-hmm.
finding messages or meaning in the grieving process, even though the origin is inexplicable, not based in science?
Yeah, I don't know. I think everybody is different
Yeah.
and everybody has a different way how they grieve. I think this is also a heavy question because I think in all this process since my mother died, the biggest surprise to me has been how much that particular loss, and I had a lot of losses in the last several years,
Hmm.
but that particular loss still continues to shape me. including my interpretation of how universe maybe sends me some kind of quiet signs, then it's up to me to either disregard them or try to be really emotionally in tune and figuring it out. Does it really mean something or not?
Mm-hmm.
I think, speaking as a scientist, maybe some physicians, scientists might find it not acceptable to talk about. I don't know. But, as a physician and a scientist, I spent over 30 years grounded in data,
Yeah.
clinical judgment, empathy, compassion, evidence-based care. But really nothing prepared me to think even deeper about those questions about life and death, like after losing my mother. What actually happened, I don't know if you would like me to share, but when she died and I took care of her to the very last minute, I witnessed something real. I witnessed her soul leaving the body. I felt her presence shift. And, since then, I somehow interpreted that she continued to send me signs, some small but undeniable moments of synchronicity or quiet reminders, like the one that you mentioned, this number. Did it really number mean something or not? I was actually questioning, and I still question many times my mind. Well, am I filling the blanks? Do I just want to attribute meaning to something? But I also, realized over time that those assigning the meanings to some of the things is very deeply comforting, but also deeply meaningful. And, interesting too, thinking as a scientist, this is something that we cannot measure. We cannot publish it, but still that is very real to me. And so trying to reconcile those two ends from the scientific perspective and kind of having something that we feel but we cannot measure, it made me really realize how much in medicine we know, but still how much we do not know when it comes about mysteries in life and death. Using, again, current scientific instruments. Maybe in 50, 100, 200 years, who knows, maybe things are going to change. I really don't know. That grief and that transformative journey has opened me personally to wonder. I actually expanded my thinking and I expanded my perceptions. I still believe in science. I'm still teaching the, scientifically, and I build the tools that are grounded in the data. But I also know and I believe that what I felt and what I saw was real. And, there is that tension and also a beauty in holding those both truths, that medicine and science are powerful, but so is that mystery in life. And the evidence that we have, evidence matters, but also kind of cannot explain some of those experiences. And I think that those two truths are not mutually exclusive. I think that they can coexist. And that dual perspective, as I'm going through this grief journey, did not make me less scientific, but I think that made me more human. I think it made me a better doctor. It made me even more empathetic educator. And it made me more grounded innovator too. Yeah. So yeah, I think that was probably most surprising and most transformative part of this journey, both as a doctor and also a daughter and someone who is navigating grief personally.
We're talking to Jasminka Criley. She's a hospitalist. Today's Kevin MD article is When Grief Hits All at Once, a Morning of Heartbreak and Love. Jasminka, let's end with some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
Oh dear, there are lots of lessons. Make time to grieve and be open-minded. That would be kind of number one. Even if you take care of others, do not forget to grieve your own losses because your emotional bank account needs to be full before you can take care of others. And our emotional fluency, in addition to our scientific mind, is probably one of the greatest tools that we can use when we take care of the others. Second, I would actually say also be very mindful how you start your own day. Mm-hmm. We live in this age of amazing technology that we have, but also in a world that is driven by constant alerts and scrolling. And what we allow into our minds first thing in the morning can actually shape our mood and our decision and our energy and emotional bandwidth in the ways that we don't even realize. And social media is powerful. I think it can connect us, it can keep us informed. So this is all really great, but it can also deliver the news maybe at a time when we're not ready for it. So I think we just need to be mindful in when do we allow to look into things, to scroll into things and learn about stuff. Another thing, as I mentioned in my article, life is fragile. And we really never know when it is going to be our last day. Death is inevitable for all of us. Grief also can be very disorienting, especially when we lose somebody very dear to us. Mm-hmm. So I would just say, remember to cherish the people in your life that matter a lot to you while you can. Speak your heart. Do not wait for the right time, because sometimes that right time might never come. And then, as I mentioned earlier too, science. Kind of be open-minded, because science has so many answers, but science still does not hold all the answers. Yeah, so those are some of the things.
Jasminka, thank you so much for sharing your story, time, and insight, and thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It was a great pleasure.